Hi everyone, welcome to my channel KLO. I'm Kiki and today I would love to share the books that I'm looking forward to reading this year in 2024. I'm going to get straight into it and start with two books that I want to reread this year, starting with Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Andy Weir is the author of The Martian, which is one of my favourite films and also one of my top books, and Project Hail Mary is a sci-fi and it focuses on the character Ryland Grace, who wakes up in space and he's the only survivor on his ship, but he can't remember why he's there. He can't remember his astronaut training. He cannot remember anything. So it's him waking up in space trying to figure out what he's doing there, and that is all I will say because I do not want to give away any spoilers. It is such a good book, and it's so good that it's being turned into a movie starring Ryan Gosling, which I am so excited for. This is one of my all-time favourite books and I 100% recommend this. I want to try and read this every year because it is that good, so I'm rereading this. This is top of my list to reread this year. Next up on the books that I want to reread this year is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is my favourite book of all time and it's a really good entry point if you want to get into books by Brandon Sanderson. It's about a city called Elantris where magic would randomly choose people and then they would become these almost like godlike beings and able to do anything with their magic, and they were pure good and they kept the city amazing, like white marble everywhere, like really beautiful. But then the magic starts to fail and the city starts to rot. The people that are chosen by the magic, they don't become these godlike beings and instead they also start to rot and they get banished behind the walls of Elantris. But at the same time, like a princess comes into town, she's ready to make a political alliance with the people there and is meant to marry the prince, but he dies. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but she doesn't believe that he's dead, so she's trying to figure out what has happened to him. And then at the same time, there are people in Elantris that are trying to figure out what happened with the magic, because the world shouldn't be like this, and they're trying to figure out what went wrong. And obviously there are people fighting against them, trying to keep them down, and they want the land to be in ruins. This book has a bit of everything. It's got like the tiniest bit of romance. There's some political intrigue. The characters are really good. The story is really good. And again, this is one I recommend. And then moving on to books I've never read before, I'm going to start with a couple of recommendations from friends and people in my writing group, starting with She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is book one in the Radiant Empire duology, and it was Shelley Parker Chan's debut novel, which became a #1 Sunday Times bestseller. It's a historical fiction book set in 1345 when China was under the Mongol rule, and it's about a brother and sister who are given their fates, and the brother is destined for greatness and the sister is destined for nothingness. But bandits attack their home, the brother ends up dying, and the sister assumes his identity and enters a monastery as a novice male monk. And there she discovers what she's made of, she discovers how strong she is, but then more misfortune happens and the monastery is attacked, so then she has to assume a new role, and then that's when she decides to step into the future of her brother's greatness and takes on his future. When my friend Austin recommended this to me, I thought, oh yes, this sounds amazing, it's going straight on my list, and this will probably be one of the first books I buy this year and one of the first books I read. If anybody has read this already, or any of the other books I mentioned, please let me know what you think of them, I'd love to hear it. Just drop a little comment below. The next book that's on my list is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. This book was recommended to me by two people in my writing group when I said that I wanted to get into more murder mystery style books, and I had no idea that this was a murder mystery book. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this book as there are two movie adaptations on it as well. I've not seen either of the movies, I've not read the books, I hadn't read anything about the books, I had no idea it was a murder mystery, and basically this book is about the descendant of a wealthy family that goes missing, and 40 years later their uncle is still looking for them and wants to know the truth, so he hires a journalist and he's helped by somebody that I think is a hacker, and I had no idea how good this book is meant to be, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. The next book that was recommended to me is The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. This is a fantasy book and it's about a woman called Nell Young and her father, Dr. Neil Young, and they deal in maps. They have this huge argument over a cheap map that Nell finds, and they end up not speaking to each other for a while until the father, Dr. Neil Young, turns up dead. So Nell investigates, and I think this is where the fantasy comes in, maybe something to do with the maps, I'm not 100% sure. So I guess it's some sort of magical map and Nell will go on a discovery and find out that there's magic in this world. I don't know, but I'm excited to read this one. It was recommended to me, so I will read it because it's got to be good if it was a recommendation. There we go. Check. Next up, I have a couple of books that have been adapted to films, and usually when that happens, I will always try and watch the film or TV show first. And that's because if I really love the book, I don't want to hate the show, so I'll give that a chance first, because 9 times out of 10 the book is always better and I can go back and read that. So the first one is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Reese Witherspoon's production company, Hello Sunshine, are the ones that adapted this into the film. And I gave the film an 8 out of 10. I watched it quite a while ago, so I don't know why I gave it an 8 and not higher, but it's one that has stayed with me. And I hear that the book is meant to be just as amazing. And this is about a girl called Kaya who grows up in a small fishing village. She kind of raises herself because her parents are quite absent, and she grows up learning her life lessons through the land. And eventually she wants to go out, meet guys, fall in love. So she ventures into town, meets a couple of guys, and later in the story there's a jock that turns up dead. And everybody just automatically ends up accusing her because she's the outsider in town and she's the easiest one to blame. So the book actually becomes about her proving her innocence, and it works. At least the film worked in flashbacks and you see her story and how she's gotten to where she is today. So again, another one I'm really excited to read because I love the film so much. Next up, we have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. And I haven't actually seen the film yet, but I want to watch that before I read the book. I don't think there's too much to say on this book. I'm pretty sure everyone has heard of The Hunger Games, and this is the prequel to The Hunger Games, and I believe it's about a young President Snow in The Hunger Games, so it's his young self, and he becomes a mentor to one of the people that has to go into the Hunger Games. And that's actually all I know about it. I don't know anything else. I don't think I need to know anything else, so I'm going to go into watching the film and reading the book with an open mind. I really enjoyed the Hunger Games series and the films, so I have high hopes for this one. I think it has quite mixed reviews, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully it will be a nice, quick, easy read for me. Then I have another historical fiction book on my list called River Sing Me Home by Eleanor Shearer. And this is also another debut novel on my list. And it's about a woman called Rachel who is a slave in Barbados until the king announces that slavery is abolished. But her plantation owner gets around it by saying that all slaves are now apprentices and they have to work for him for 6 years before they can leave. But Rachel is having none of that because it's rubbish. So she runs away and leaves the plantation and goes off to find her 5 children that were sold at birth. And it's the story of this mother needing to know if her children are alive. And I think the story will also go into the children's, like what happens in their lives. It sounds really captivating, and another one that I'm really excited to read this year. Next is a sci-fi book called Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This has been on my Amazon wishlist for ages, and I don't know why I haven't gotten around to buying it, so that is on the list for this year. And the book focuses on Earth is a dying planet, so the remaining people on it need to leave and find a new home, and then boom, they do. They find a world that is perfect for humans to live on, but it turns out they're not the only ones that have found the world. Does seem like a pretty simple plot, but the reviews are amazing, and I've been wanting to read this one for ages. Next is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. The storyline of this sounds very Willy Wonka-esque to me, but with books, and it's about a woman called Lucy who is a teaching aide, and she wants to adopt one of the children that she's teaching. But due to her circumstances, due to funds, she thinks it's impossible to do. But that is until her favourite author, who mysteriously quit writing years ago, is back on the scene, and he's holding a competition to win a one-of-a-kind book that will change their life. And Lucy is one of the 4 lucky contestants that is in with a chance to win this book. Not sure what this will be like, but I'm interested. Next up is A Palm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I haven't read anything by Becky Chambers, so I don't know what type of book she writes, but this sounded so captivating, and I think that it's going to pose a lot of questions. I have the blurb to read for this one because I can't, I don't think I could describe this one and do it justice, so here you go. Centuries before, robots of Panga gained self-awareness, laid down their tools, wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. They faded into myth and urban legend. Now, the life of the tea monk who tells this story is appended by the arrival of a robot, there to honour the old promise of checking in. The robot cannot go back until the question of what do people need is answered, but the answer to that question depends on who you ask and how, and they will need to ask it a lot. And Chambers' series asks, in a world where people have what they want, does having more matter? Like, this is one if you've read it, I would love to know what you think. Like, the reviews, again, are quite mixed on it, but this is book one of a series that I hope is going to be amazing, and I'll just read them all because it sounds so good. Next up is the one and only non-fiction book I have on my list, and it's a historical non-fiction called Killing the Witches, The Horror of Salem, Massachusetts by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard. And this is about the events that happened in 1692 and 1693 in the town of Salem, Massachusetts, and the book says that it will go into the historical context of similar episodes of community mania that happened around the area. When I was younger, I was super obsessed with witches, with Salem, and with anything to do with this topic. And I don't know how I found this book, but it must have come up somewhere, like on Goodreads on a recommended list. And that is why it's on my TBR list for this year. Then we have First to Die by James Patterson. And this is book number one of the Women's Murder Club series. And the series is about 4 women that all work in various fields to do with like crime units, such as a homicide inspector, a crime journalist, and other jobs. But when their usual procedures don't help them catch a killer, they decide to come together, learn from each other, and create their own women's murder club. Bonding over crime, love it. I've not read any James Patterson books, but I did like his films, his Alex Cross films, Kiss the Girls and Along Came a Spider. I have taken his masterclass, so I know that they're not true to the books, but the film started with him, so the books have to be good, right? And also, as a side note, his masterclass was so good. As a new writer, it helped me so much. His was the one that I got the most use from, so if you're also an author or like new to writing and looking to get into it, I do recommend his masterclass. Then we have The Cemetery of Untold Stories by Julia Alvarez. And this book sounds awesome. It's about a writer called Alma Cruz who doesn't want to end up like one of her other friends who, trying to finish her book, almost drove her crazy and threatened her sanity. Alma ends up inheriting land in the Dominican Republic, which is where she's from, and she ends up turning this land into a literal cemetery for her like forgotten, unfinished manuscripts and stories. But somehow, I don't know how, the characters come to life and rewrite their stories. And I do have a couple of characters that the blurb mentions that I wanted to share with you guys. There's Bienvenida, the abandoned second wife of a dictator, and then Manuel Cruz, who is a doctor who fought in the Dominican underground and escaped to the United States. And these are just a couple of the characters that the blurb mentions that come to life. So it'll be really interesting to see what other characters come to life and how they rewrite their stories. Then last but not least, we have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of the few Brandon Sanderson books I've not yet read, so it's top of my list for this year. And this one is a standalone book that takes place in his Cosmere universe. And look how pretty the cover art is. It's by an artist called Alia Chen. And this is about 2 characters, Yumi and Painter, who are from 2 different worlds and they're somehow forced to come together. Yumi has led a super strict life in a beautiful land where I think she can summon spirits that help her community to thrive, but all she wants is for one day to be a normal person. And then Painter comes from a land of darkness and nightmares where all he wants is to be a hero. But now they have to figure out how they've come together and return home before it's too late. And there we go. These are some of the books that I'm really looking forward to reading this year in 2024. And my TBR list is just a guide. I'm sure there will be other books that I like read in between these ones, but at least I have something to go on. We have a bookshop actually opening up hopefully next month, just down the road from where I live. So I'll be going there to try and grab a big book haul that I can share with you guys. But let me know if you found any of these interesting, if you've heard of them for the first time, if you're adding them to your TBR list. I would love to know. Drop them in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do consider liking and hitting that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!